a quorum, but Representative Brown, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. Thank you for time and opportunity. Oh, for the record, Chris Brown, District 16, out of Kansas City. Again, thank you for the time and effort to introduce House Bill 730 to you today. There's two parts of this bill. I'm going to deal with the eviction side first and then talk about the home inspection side after that. The eviction moratorium side originates, that bill originates basically with the COVID-19 pandemic. If you remember back to that, the federal government, specifically the Department of Health and Human Services, working through the Center for Disease Control, issued an order halting evictions that generally broadly covered all residential property. Under the moratorium, a landlord could not evict a tenant for non-payment of rent. Quite honestly, this is simply not a workable situation. Keeping in mind that 50% of all residential rental property in the United States are owned by mom and pop investors that have less than 10 rental properties. So for government to come in and tell people basically that for a period of time, 12, 13, 14 months, you cannot evict someone for non-payment of rent, that just doesn't work. A lot of times, in particular, if you are just starting out investing in real estate, your margins are fairly small. Your property taxes are still due. Your insurance on that property is still due. Maintenance needs to be done on that property. And the bottom line is Bank of America still expects that mortgage to be paid on the first of every month. So a lot of folks just simply struggled. A lot of people lost property, and a lot of landlords still are owed a tremendous amount of money, would be my guess. Nevertheless, this eviction moratorium, of course, was challenged in court. Finally, on August 26th of 2021, in Alabama Association of Realtors versus the Department of Health and Human Services, the Supreme Court ruled that the CDC exceeded its authority in issuing the moratorium, effectively ending the moratorium in August of 2021. And I want to say that this bill is in no way unsympathetic to renters. It's not trying to do some callous thing to help people evict tenants. That's not it. The rental landlord-tenant situation needs tenants to make that work. So we're not trying to do something against someone that maybe has some housing insecurity. The problem is the eviction moratorium was a clear violation of contract law and infringement on property rights. If I, as a landlord, have a negotiated contract with someone and then a government agency or government comes in and supersedes or undermines that contract, I think that's an infringement on contract law. And in terms of property rights, I think that eviction moratorium was a clear arbitrary seizure of private property. It appropriates private property being used for public purpose, and I submit that that's a clear violation of the 5th and the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution. I think that was an illegal act and it should not have happened. Nevertheless, so anyway, we are hoping that municipalities around the state, because I do have concern, and I see it quite a little bit in the news media, that organizations at times of crisis, perceived or real, would try to do something where they would locally have an eviction moratorium put into place for whatever reason that would be just absolutely damaging to landlords. The second part of this bill deals with inspections. To read the bill, it says, no political subdivision shall require a property owner to have a home inspection conducted of a residential property prior to the sale of the property. My family's been in the real estate business for over 30 years. And for a local government to require a property owner to have an inspection on the property prior to the sale, I have two issues with that. One, it's exceedingly redundant. On just a normal sale of a residential property, If there's a mortgage on that property, that mortgage company is going to do an appraisal on it, which serves to a degree as an inspection. A lot of times there's appraisal requirements for property. Maybe they have some structural issues, maybe there's some issues with the property that need to be corrected, and the mortgage company is going to require that. Second thing, again, on a normal residential sale, usually the buyer is going to have an inspection done on that property. And also keep in mind, there are some sales that are an as-is sale. Maybe it's going to be a tear down. There's no reason to have an inspection on that property, none whatsoever. So for a local municipality to require that, again, I don't think, one, it's necessary. And again, I think you could argue that that also may be an infringement on some property rights as well. I think with that, I think I'm going to conclude. I would be happy to answer some questions.
Thank you, Representative. Before we go to questions, we have a quorum, so we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Ash, call the roll.
Senator Brown.
Here.
Senator Moon. Senator Gannon. Here. Senator Koenig. Here. Senator McCreary. Senator Razor. Senator Schwar.
We have quorum. All right. Just going to remind all the witnesses that are testified, please fill out a witness form. We've got two bills here today. We're on our first one now, but we are going to do a quick executive session. I make a motion to move an executive session. Do I have a second? I have a second. We are in executive session. I now move that Senate Bill 7 be brought before the committee. Do I have a second? I have a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is before the committee. I have a committee substitute which has been distributed. It ends in .03C. The substitute was presented by Senator Rowden the day of the hearing. It has been distributed to the committee. I now move for the adoption of committee substitute. Do I have a second? I have a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the committee substitute say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The substitute is adopted. I now move that Senate Bill 7, as amended by the committee substitute, be voted out. Do pass. Do I have a second? I have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Ash will call the roll to vote Senate Bill 7 out of committee. Do pass.
Senator Brown.
Aye.
Senator Moon. Senator Gannon. Senator Koenig. Senator McCreary. Senator Razor. Senator Schwar. 4-0. I'm going to leave the board open.
By your vote of 4-0, the motion carries, and we will leave the board open for the members that are not here. I now move that we move out of executive session. Do I have a second? I have a second. We are out of executive session. Are there any questions for Representative Brown? Seeing none. Are there any witnesses testify in favor of the bill? Please step forward and go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Jason Zamkus. I'm a registered lobbyist on behalf of the Missouri Association of Realtors. Just want to thank the sponsor for bringing this bill to the committee. I think he did an excellent job of explaining in detail what the proposal seeks to do, and we'd like to just go on record in support. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. Is there any questions for the witness? All right, seeing none. Next witness in favor of the bill, please come forward. Thank you. Are there any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Is there any other witnesses testify in favor of the bill? Please come forward. Any witnesses testify in opposition to the bill? Whenever you're ready, Jackie.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Jackie Barget. I'm a registered lobbyist for the city of St. Louis to testify in opposition to House Bill 730. We completely understand the intent of the bill to protect landlords and their investments, but also believe that local governments and the courts, when used correctly, can use eviction moratoriums to help protect families from being evicted in times where they can't earn incomes. With that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you. Are there any other witnesses testifying in opposition to the bill? Any witnesses testify for informational purposes only? All right. Representative, do you have any final comments?
I did forget to say, this may sound somewhat familiar, but Senator Trent had a very similar bill previously passed out of the Senate. I think it was Senate Bill 222.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Thank you. we've got another bill coming up. Senator Brown is going to present, and he is on his way. The Senate Bill 169. This is Senate Bill 169, whenever you're ready.
My name is Ben Brown, for the record, State Senator for District 26. Thank you for the opportunity to hear SB 169. I realize this committee heard a number of similar vaccine-related bills last week, so I'll keep my presentation brief and just go through some of the key points of what my particular bill does. The first section states that no political subdivision, public school district, state department, or agency or public official shall require any person to receive a COVID-19 vaccination. Second section addresses employer-related medical treatments, defined as requirement of any drug, medicine, synthetic substance, or therapy, and allows an exemption for two reasons. One, if the employee holds a sincerely held religious belief that forbids the employee from receiving the medical treatment, and the reasonable accommodation of such belief would not pose an undue burden on the employer. Second, if the employee has received a recommendation from a licensed physician stating that the required medical treatment is likely to be harmful or not in the employee's best medical interests. When navigating any public health crisis, it is important we maintain a balance between preserving the public health while still protecting personal liberty. Initially, we were told the COVID-19 vaccine would all but eliminate transmission of the virus, and that simply has not been the case. I believe it should be up to the individual to weigh the risks and benefits of a medical treatment such as this, and so I ask the committee to support SB 168. Thank you, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Are there any questions for Senator Brown? Well, seeing none. Are there any witnesses to testify in favor of the bill? Please come forward. Seeing none, are there any witnesses to... Oh, never mind, we got one. Are you in opposition? Opposition. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Kara Corches on behalf of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry in opposition, similar to last week, so I'll keep my comments brief. We strongly believe that in a system of free enterprise, that the government should not be involved in setting workplace policies. Like I said, I think last week, we're not hearing really about vaccine requirements anymore, but regardless, our stance is pretty simple: let business decide. Every employer is different, knows best how to run their own business as they see fit. It's kind of a dangerous precedent. Today we're talking about vaccine policies, what could be next. And I do want to point out on this, when we're talking about vaccine requirements, employers have long held the right to require vaccines in their workplace. Whether that's a COVID vaccine or a tetanus vaccine or a rabies vaccine, there are reasons why employers do require vaccines for health and safety reasons for their employees and their customers. And so I think that would chip away at that long-held right that employers can require vaccines in the workplace. again, every employer is different, and we think that they should have the ability and freedom to set their own policies. It's a new requirement on businesses, which we view as a new business mandate, and therefore we are going to be opposed. Can take any questions that the committee may have.
Any questions for the witness? Senator Koenig.
All things being equal, I would agree with you that businesses should be able to operate the way they want, and maybe potentially have requirements such as vaccines. The problem is, what makes this situation different is these vaccines are unable to be, you can't sue for damages if something was done wrong to you. All the evidence shows that, especially for younger people, that it doesn't permit transmission. And so I do think because of those circumstances, the business isn't liable if someone gets like a heart condition, if you're a young male, which is, it has shown, there's evidence that there's a higher possibility of something going wrong with the vaccine than actually COVID itself. And so I do think this does present a different set of circumstances because the businesses is doing this with no liability. And that's not the case in other circumstances. Any response to that?
Yeah, so on that, we believe that any injuries related to a vaccine that would be required by an employer would go through our system of work comp. That's how our interpretation has been on other workplace medical requirements in the past. So we think we do have a system of work comp that would take care of those situations. Probably no surprise to you, we are not in favor of setting up more lawsuit opportunities against businesses. So yeah, we think work comp kind of covers that already.
Any other questions for the witness? Senator Mann.
Thank you. With regard to vaccines, I think it was known that the CDC actually changed their definition of vaccines, and Dr. Burks from the federal government actually stated in public that this particular shot did not prevent those from getting the virus in the future. So with that in mind, does that change your perspective on whether or not there should be any intervention by government to say that they shouldn't be required to get an unapproved, unknown consequences of a particular shot, so-called vaccination, or lose your job?
I mean, I have a feeling we're probably not going to agree on this regardless. I do think that vaccines, and this vaccine in particular, it did save lives versus the number of people that were also killed from COVID. But also on this bill, it's not just COVID vaccines, it's any medical treatment required by employers. So like I said, a tetanus vaccine, could be even a TB test. I don't think those are in question on their validity. We're probably not going to agree on this, but we do support the COVID vaccine broadly for those who choose to look at the studies. So yeah, we're just not going to agree on that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on some things on this where, we start talking about other vaccines. Like I said, like last week, I mean, we have a business that requires rabies vaccines. And, when you're working in an environment where you're very susceptible to that, and these vaccines have been around since the 1950s, early 60s, and we make it very clear when we're hiring a veterinarian, and most of them are vaccinated anyway. They just have to get boosters. I mean, because like at Mizzou, you have to be rabies vaccinated to be a student there. But if they come from a different school, not all schools require it. But we require that as an employer. And if you don't like it, then you don't have to work for us. And I realize, the COVID deal is a little bit different thing. But my concern is where do we stop? Is it going to? Does this language start affecting other vaccinations like what we require as employers?
Yeah, we agree with that. And I guess the one thing I do want to underline is I feel like on this whole debate of COVID, these were unknown circumstances that employers were trying to figure out. How do we keep our employees safe? How do we keep our customers safe? What do we do? It was not easy. How many of them, their doors were shuttered. They were trying to make ends meet. And so I think employees a lot of times have been villainized in this debate on vaccines. But employers were the ones shifting their manufacturing lines to make PPE during the pandemic and trying to do everything they can to keep their employees safe. Employees are a business's greatest assets, and so sometimes tough decisions are made to protect their employees and their customers.
Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, are there any other witnesses to testify in opposition to the bill?
Senators, my name is Megan Travis Henderson, representing Missouri Hospital Association, here to oppose Senate Bill 169. I'll go through the bill in two parts because it impacts us differently depending on the section. The first section, Section 191-230, prohibits a public body or political subdivision from requiring a COVID-19 vaccine. Our public hospitals, which are hospital district-based or county-based, are subject to a CMS condition of participation. CMS is the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. It is what allows a hospital to accept Medicaid and Medicare money. Their certification. They require a vaccine mandate or an exemption for every employee and every individual who's regularly employed within the walls of the hospital. This would prohibit any of those public entities from requiring the COVID-19 vaccine, which would put us in direct conflict with federal law. That would make us subject to an IJ, an immediate jeopardy citation, which ultimately gives you 90 days to fix the problem, and if you don't, your doors close. So we are against the Section 191-230 as it is currently drafted. We've spoken with the senator to explain our issue, and there is language that has moved through the House. It is sitting on the third read calendar currently that carves out the entities that need to be allowed to have a COVID-19 vaccine requirement under federal law, and so we're happy to work with the senator to get that language in there. The second section, Section 292-644, prohibits any employer from requiring medical treatment. Medical treatment's drafted pretty broadly. It would include a COVID-19 vaccine. It would possibly include things like TB testing, which is common in healthcare settings. The way it is currently drafted, it does not comport with the exemption process that we are subject to under federal law. There are medical and religious exemptions, but they are very specific, and the language is much broader and does not follow the hardship the allowable hardships for an employer under federal law. We have also raised those issues with the senator, and we're willing to work with him to get language that we can comply with federal law. Also, the second section does not allow any sort of formal process for an exemption. Just if you have a religious belief, you are not subject to any adverse outcome if you refuse any sort of medical treatment. Under federal law, we have to have paperwork. You have to ask for an exemption to be able to get one, and we are audited by CMS on those exemptions, and so we need to have paperwork to show that we have had a fair process. Again, we're happy to work with the senator to address these issues, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Megan. Is that the CMS language, carve-out language that was similar to like last year?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions for witness? Seeing none. Are there any other witnesses testify in opposition to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Nikki Strong with the Missouri Healthcare Association, on record in support for the exact same reasons that Megan just explained to you. Our nursing homes have to abide by the same CMS requirements that she referred to as the hospitals, so we would ask for the same changes to be made to the bill that she was referring to as well, and be happy to work with the sponsor on that as well.
Any questions for the witness? Right. Seeing none, are there any other witnesses testify in opposition to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, Shannon Cooper today representing the City of Kansas City and the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. My testimony kind of follows Kara. We just think that employers can make that decision. And on behalf of the Chamber, we have members on both spectrums of this, but at the end of the day, they're going to make a decision based on what's best for their employees and their customers. So we'd ask that the bill does not proceed. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the witness? All right. Seeing none, are there any other witnesses testifying in opposition to the bill? Any witnesses testify for informational purposes only? All right. Seeing none, Senator, do you have any closing comments?
Yeah, just a quick point of clarification, because a number of witnesses stated this would prevent employers from enacting a policy, and they should have the freedom to put in place those policies that they feel best protects their workers and customers, and I'm very sympathetic to that as a business owner myself. This does not state that an employer cannot enact those policies. It simply lays out two examples of when an employee could be exempted from those, whether they have sincere religious belief or if a licensed physician tells them that that's medically not in their best interest. So just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Thank you for that clarity. Are there any other comments you want to make?
Nope, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, with no more business to come before the committee, I move to adjourn. Do I have a second? I have a second. We're adjourned.